So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is our new My Two Cents podcast. And today I have Gemma, who's going to join us for what I think is going to be actually quite an inspirational session. I often get the question from people towards myself, how did you manage to grow up the ladder, the corporate ladder? Although you have an ethnical background, but that same thing happens, of course, also for women. Diversity and inclusion is one of the things well, it's basically, sometimes I feel it's a buzzword we use. We like to use it, and every company says we are diverse and inclusive, but effectively not many companies are. What I want to focus on today is more on the side of what can you do as a person to climb up that corporate ladder. Gemma and I met each other, I think, a few weeks ago, actually online. No, it was not a date. It was just online in a normal fashion. But when I spoke to her a few weeks ago, I noticed that she has such an inspirational background that's a story I really want to share. She made that journey from being a scientist, and she works in the science area. She's going to tell you a lot more about that later. She's more specialist than me, so I'm going to shut up on that topic. But she worked from a journey from scientist to ultimately being an executive of a really cool company doing really cool stuff. And as she stated last time, in her line of business, you have to make the move to management, or basically your career stops. I think that's a bit too easy, Gemma. It's a bit too easy because I think there's a lot more behind it to actually achieve a career like you had and you have been building, and you are building moving forward, but you're not done yet. You're just starting, actually. So today, before we start further, Gemma, can you let's start with what do you actually do now? Who are you?
First of all, thanks, Rahim, for allowing me to be in your podcast. I think it's an honor. Currently, I am the CEO of a company called NutraResearch. NutraResearch is a company that's founded by pharmacists, but it's focused on food supplements, on nutraceuticals. So what we do is a very simple sentence, which I sometimes use, is we innovate with food supplements with the quality of pharma, which is not easy. It's a challenge, but this is our unique space. We work with a lot of rigor. We put the standards of pharmaceutical products in nutraceuticals because although regulation doesn't treat them as alike, it's something that you take into your body and it should be treated alike, and it gives you a lot of guarantees. So that's what we do in our team. Currently, we have two sites. We have an R&D site, a pilot plant, where all the formulations and innovation is done. And we also recently acquired a manufacturing site, which is an extra challenge because not only we develop our own products, but then we manufacture them for our clients. We are purely a B2B company. We do not have our own brand. And this is one of the cores of our innovation, because this means that if some clients come to us and asks us for a formulation, then another client comes and asks us for a formulation that is for the same indication, I'm obliged to formulate something that's purely different, to keep confidentiality, to keep respect, so that pushes our company to keep finding better solutions every time. So that's part of the motor and the driver of our innovation within the company.
Well, that's actually quite interesting because I have never looked at it like that. You now just triggered me to something else. I'm going to go a bit off topic. Sorry for that. But
fine.
Innovation, I understand that in pharmaceuticals and in medical, innovation is a key topic. It's a really key topic in respect to continuously evolving the drugs people are developing, like now you can see with COVID, but let's not touch that part for today. How is it that you can, basically what I understand, you're white labeling solutions, but it's not really white labeling because it's actually customizing towards different organizations. But a food supplement, a supplement for a certain direction is a supplement for a certain solution. How can you innovate?
Not really, because what we're doing is we're trying to find innovative solutions. For example, what we do now, we moved from what I call the reactive, being a reactive company, such as a client comes to us and asks us, or well, I would like a food supplement for hair loss. Okay, then I have to think about something. What we're doing now, we changed that model and we combine that to a reactive model. So we do market analysis and we focus on the new trends. We know already that this year is going to be a year where sleep aid, stress compounds are on fashion, and the new trends are saying that people just don't want a drug. They are moving towards more natural solutions. So here is we take a role on innovating. The first question is, okay, what's on the market? What can we do better? And not only in terms of ingredients, because as you said, there's a few things you can do there, but in terms of technology. If I use pharma technology and I put a food supplement within a tablet or a capsule that has a specific release pattern, if I deliver an active during the entire night instead of giving you a shot before you go to sleep, the effects are going to be different. That's where we think we can innovate. So what we do is, looking at those market trends, we have products off the shelf, ready to go. So when a client comes and says, well, I would like something for this specific use because I think there is a new trend in the market, what we do, we say, okay, we can customize your product and you'll have it probably within 6 months if you want to do everything right. Otherwise, we have this solution that pretty much matches your needs, and this is off the shelf. You can launch within a month. And this is good for usually clients that want to speed up products in the market. And now we combine both solutions.
So it's like from reactive to proactive, actually.
Correct, yeah. Correct.
Really cool, really cool. Hey, so we started off with the basically my introduction is that you have a really inspiring journey. I've been reading up to your background in the back end. I saw that you had written over 40 scientific articles over the years, co-created, self-created, etc. I see that you work both in US and in Europe. So I also think we have a quite an interesting chat around the difference in cultures in how they perceive people, female leaders within organizations. And you just now mentioned something even more interesting, or more also interesting to touch on, is being a female leader of a plant. I see different types of takes. Can you maybe share a personal story? Of course, no naming names, but a personal story just to illustrate what it means to be a female leader within the scientific world.
Well, sometimes I think it's sad, but sometimes it's not easy. I remember when at the very beginning of my career, I started working in a plant, and it was funny because my first job was in a very well-known pharmaceutical company in Spain. I was part of the R&D team, and I was told, you've been hired to fix what's called the tunnel effect. And I said, well, what's the tunnel effect? And they say, yes, you'll know easily. The formulations are created in the R&D center, which is downtown in Barcelona. And then we have the manufacturing plant on the outskirts. So when the formulations crossed the tunnel that goes through the mountains here near Barcelona, nothing works. So this is the tunnel effect you have to fix. That was funny, but then you find yourself with a white coat in the manufacturing plant with more than 150 plant operators, all male, all much older than yourself, and all with a ton of experience. And that gives you some respect. So I think that the first thing that I did and I had to do is like, look, guys, I don't know nothing about this. I need to see exactly what you do, and then I'll try to figure out what's going on. But first of all, humble and humility. This is very important. understanding what's your position, and you can go ahead and pretty much my experience has been all over from this experience to the very end. You have to lead from example, and the first thing that you have to tell your team or show to your teams is, I either have done the job I am telling you to do before, so I'm speaking with some property, or I don't know how to do it, but I will be very happy to spend 24 hours a week with you and your team and be your shadow and understand what's going on and see if we can optimize that process.
Yeah.
And this has helped me a lot because you can help the teams and you can lead from the example, and then you earn their respect. Having said that, there's always cultures that are surprised of having a female leader, but with time they understand. I remember the first time I was given a team in China. I told them, well, I'll come over and visit you. And they went nuts trying to find me some transportation from the airport to Shanghai, from Shanghai to Nanjing, the train. And it all happened that my plane landed earlier than expected. So I took the public transportation, I changed my train ticket, and I was in the plant earlier than anyone. So I called my contact person and said, guys, what time do you start working? And they said, well, around 9-ish, because sometimes we come with a bus. How come are you calling me? I said, well, I'm in the plant. No way. Said, guys, there is a thing called an application called Maps with Me that can function offline. I showed that to the driver. I found a taxi, and here I am. Yeah. And it's not impossible, but I think that made a milestone with them and said, well, if she wants to come, she'll figure it out. and there I was. And all cultures are different, and you have to adapt. I remember celebrating. I never missed a New Year celebration around February with my Chinese team. I would play with them, I would dance with them, I would eat fortune cookies with them, and I did a huge effort to speak the very basics, just the numbers, and to be polite, which I think it's very important. I would travel with another manager that wouldn't care less, and he said, well, you're losing a lot of time trying to read all these books and understanding how you're supposed to give a business card, if you're supposed to look at the eyes or not. But I think it helped me a lot. It's important.
I agree with that fully. I've done a lot of international work, and when I went to a new market where I didn't know the people, I always looked up the culture, and the culture is really important. There are many do's and don'ts, and if you don't understand them, you will lose respect. But there are also other cultural elements which are important. For instance, we were actually in China, and we had a meeting to explain a transformation which we were aiming to implement globally. Now, as with any transformation, a transformation implementation globally is not a one size fits all. You may have an idea of a one size, but there's always a tendency that you have to adapt towards culture and a way of communicating. We went to a meeting. It's actually interesting. We did a presentation, and everybody was applauding, and everybody was saying yes, but no one meant yes. Actually, no one understood it. It was polite to do that. In the evening, we had a bit of a board meeting in a restaurant. As in general, it was a karaoke restaurant. So people were singing, getting drunk. And I was talking to the people there, and they said, look, Rahim, you know our culture. Huh? No one in the whole room, maybe 5% actually understood what was said, because you guys did it in English and not in Chinese. And the second thing is we have a local culture. They just didn't get it. Now it's your turn to make sure that all these executives really understand tonight. So tomorrow, they will help their people understand what the impact is on them. But it's a cultural thing. The fact that people smile, They bend over to say hi. It's a politeness that does not always mean that what you think it would perceive to be is actually what's happening. So I'm glad that you did that. I'm surprised that your colleague did not do that, because I think it's really important to understand those local cultures from both one, respect, and the second one, understanding if people actually get it, what you're telling them.
I think it's a must, and also you have to find a very good balance between being polite, finding exactly what your role is and what position you are in there, and also understanding what your personality is. I remember reading from those books, there was one rule that I absolutely overcome because I just couldn't bear with it, and it was, well, being the boss in China, you're not supposed to say thank you. And I kept saying thank you every time they did something for me. And I said, this is something that I cannot change. I'm sorry. I'm born and raised that way, and I'll keep thanking people. This is it. So I think you have to find a balance to show your humanity and to show that you're a human being. But I remember that one of the things that my second revelation was they kept me in one of the best conference room they had. And every day for lunch, they would bring me a lunch box with specially ordered from Burger King. And I would eat alone. And I said, stop it. The second day I said, where are you guys going for lunch? He said, well, there is a canteen, but it's just for employees. I said, well, I'm an employee as well. I want to eat the same things you're eating. No way. And they know, because they didn't know about my background, but having lived 6 years in the States and enjoying a lot Chinatown, I was absolutely familiar with chopsticks. I love Chinese food. And I think that broke a barrier that they had with, well, some of the big bosses from Spain are coming. And that helped a lot. And ever since I went to China, they would especially say, she doesn't eat from Burger King, she eats with us.
Well, I'm going to take one takeaway from this one, because what you're actually saying, and that's also what I personally believe in, is that when you are leading in an international environment, don't position yourself as someone else, as someone you're not. Second thing is, be one of the crew. Is something I'm going to get out of this one, and I think that's important.
Exactly.
Although you have a higher level, and that hierarchy in certain levels needs to be respected, just because it's culturally like that. There are ways to change the dynamic by being you and being part of the whole team. So that's really cool. But you mentioned also that that's China. China has a cultural thing. You worked in the US. You have worked a lot in Spain also. There are also massive differences in culture, because I know I worked in the past 7-8 years mainly for US-based organizations. I now live in Spain, so I'm also intrigued by the differences in culture and in the way organizations are steered, which are in Spain, from my perspective, and maybe it's an assumption based on the experience, because I don't have that much experience here in Spain, but more hierarchical versus in the US, more target-driven. And it doesn't matter how you hit your target as long as you hit it.
That's it. One of my first impact images in US, I had been in US working for a US company for probably a couple of weeks. And I was invited to a dine out meeting with the company, and we were supposed to go to the winery and spend overnight there, and the very next morning do a co-creation session and then come back. And I was told, where after dinner the CEO will come and give us a speech. So coming from Spain, where if you in the Spanish lab I used to work for, there were different lab coat colors depending on your status in the company. Only pharmacists could wear a white lab coat. Then if you had a blue coat, you were just an operator, or another different color for a technician. Obviously, you had to wear your brand suit depending on which events you were attending. And all of a sudden, after dinner, this guy that's supposed to be the CEO comes and gives me a speech with his biking suit. It was like, no way. This is the CEO. And it was amazing because I said, well, thank God people in another country don't judge yourself with the way you're dressed, the color of your skin, or even if you have so many degrees or not. Because in the States, one of the things that I adore the most is that if you have an opening position, it says for this specific type of work, we need someone with a BS or a PhD or / 25 years of experience. Fantastic. I mean, sometimes you just not need a specific degree to do something. If you have the experience, you've done it your entire life, and by experience, you know much more. And it doesn't matter if you're male, female, or you have a different color of skin, or another thing that now is interesting, and it's becoming a trend. It seems that we're pushing away, and I think this is the biggest mistake ever in Europe, especially in Spain. We're sending away senior people from the organizations. And people over 50 and sometimes even over 60 have a ton and a half of experience that we could use from. So that diversity is the one that I think we should look for. The same thing in working teams. I remember one of my biggest challenges in my career, and a breakthrough in science, which has led to many patents, came from a conversation we had in a canteen during lunch in the States while discussing a project that couldn't work. And I said, well, my formulation could do that if the machine could do this, but the machine has a limitation. And an engineer that was having lunch across myself said, well, I can modify the machine to do that if your formulation can do this. And then we started a team with an engineer, a statistic, a pharmacist, and I realized that things could move much faster if we did that. So I came back to Spain. I had the luxury of working for a company that allowed me to create an R&D team that went from 2 people to 90. But during that growth, I remember the specific day where HR came and told me, we have to write down the ad for recruiting new people. I said, okay, I'll write you down. And the guy in HR came back and said, well, there must be a mistake because you have put here that you need either a chemist or an engineer or a pharmacist or a biologist. In R&D here, we only recruit pharmacists. And I said, well, no way, this is a mistake. I need diversity. Otherwise, these clones are going to think the same because we are all monkeys made with the same mold, and we are not going to innovate. But this is something that in our culture is very difficult to break these kind of bonds. And it's sad, but we need to overcome that.
I think it's a fixed mindset. It's a really fixed mindset we see. I must also say that, look, we are one Europe, but we are not really one Europe, to be honest. The differences I've seen, I worked 2 years in France. If I see the culture, not only from the company I worked for, but also the clients I worked with in France, that culture is so incredibly different from, for instance, organizations in the Benelux or in the UK. So we have a long way to go. We want to be one Europe, or at least governmentally want to be one Europe. Take aside all the different opinions you see across Europe. Effectively, it's going to be quite difficult for us to mingle those cultures into basically a new culture. On the other hand, it also is, I think, an opportunity for organizations to really do something different. I have done a lot of cross-border transformations. And if you see the fights you see within one market towards the other market, the pacts, the political environment. I think last week or this week, I actually shared one of my posts, which was around change politics. We have without good understanding of cultures of a certain market or a certain business, because cultures can also be within organizations, huh? The financial culture, the commercial culture, all those different things. Without the openness and the positive stimulation, I don't want to say push, because that's basically where they get me for in my projects. I come in at the end, but the positive stimulation is something we need to keep seeking for when leading those types of transformations. Hey, going back a bit to that part of innovation, because innovation is really your thing. If I look at your career and the steps you made, innovation is a big part of it, but how do you enable your people to stay innovative? Because ultimately you're the executive, so you shouldn't be doing the work, but you should be stimulating other people. What is your magic power you put into the company to make sure that people stay innovative and have that growth mindset, that innovation mindset?
I think that all the employees and all the members of the team, first of all, should not have the feeling that there are borders in the work they are doing. And this is something that I must admit that I learned from the States, the American culture. I remember coming from Europe, where when I thought about doing an experiment, I would go to my boss, I would show them or justify them the experiment and say, look, and I'm going to do this and 3 batches. And then he said, okay, write me a report and then we'll think about it. And in 3 months, you'll have something back. And then the first time I did that in the States, my supervisor came back and said, how come you haven't done this yet? And I said, wow, this is fantastic. And from that perspective, I've done many, many, many things. A ton of them might have sounded crazy, but most of them led to a solution, led to solving a problem that was very open-minded, both in formulations and then in modifying equipment that could have restrictions for moving forward. So the environment you need to create is an environment where people is not afraid to break something. We're in an era where you can do that with technology. If I buy a new toy, I buy a new machine, I can get in as an administrator and say, you can allow people to go within this degree within the machine. And I know they're not going to break it. Otherwise, just play with it. Hit it, cool it, press it, touch it, and that helps creativity a lot. Also, I like to go around my team and try to sense exactly what motivates them. There's always a guy that loves equipment, and every time you buy a new piece of equipment, they'll ask. and then you go to that guy and ask them, so I haven't found a piece of equipment that does this, but maybe if we mix this equipment with that one, maybe that can help and we can find something that can do this. And right there, you just planted the seed for creativity. And then the guy comes back 3 weeks afterwards and has found a solution or something that's interesting, or has called a vendor that comes and here you have a prototype of something. The same thing happens with formulations and compositions. If you touch the right driver, so next year is going to be a year where people are going to need a lot of food supplements to sleep. And we have these 2 or 3 that are the classics. But I thought, do we know what happens when people take this in the body? Do we synthesize another molecule? Could we formulate with that molecule? And so the product makes you an effect faster. Can you tell that to the people? Could that be an innovation? If you have people with the right attitude, and that's the magic word, it's not how many PhDs my team has, is do they have the attitude? Do they have the curiosity? Then that's the driver.
I love this one. All right, so we're getting a bit to the end of the podcast. Recently, I had a chat with actually a coach who was helping others, who's helping people to look at their future career and how they can, for instance, grow up the executive level. If I look at you, you're an outstanding example from someone who started as a scientist, worked her way up, had a lot of experience internationally, combined with you actually also did a lot. Huh? So it's not just climbing up and doing nice innovations and doing stuff, but actually delivering really cool stuff, really cool articles. I'm going to be honest, for me, they're less cool because I don't have a clue what they're about. I tried to read them, but I gave up. I'm not from that segment, but I know that from a scientific perspective, you have done a lot and you put the effort in. If you would look at someone, let's say you would find someone 25 years old, just coming from uni, starting like you. What would be for you on one hand, the competencies they should develop / the behaviors they should demonstrate to stand out in the scientific world?
I would say the first thing is coming from a scientific background. The first question is, are you going to like to be an executive? Because sometimes we think that it's a must to grow up in the ladder. Well, it might be a must, but you have to shine. Wherever you get up into the ladder, you have to shine. And you can only shine if you're doing exactly something that you really, really like. And there are a lot of scientists that don't like to lose the contact with the lab. So the first question is, if you're going to be willing to be in the lab always, you are going to be a great R&D director or R&D manager, but you cannot move to another place because you're not going to be happy. And the most important thing, if you have to spend many, many hours in your life doing something, you have to be happy. The other thing is be open-minded. Question yourself. Ask, what am I not doing that other people are doing that will help innovate and create, especially for R&D teams? This is very much important. And you mentioned about behaviors. I think that the most important one is lead from the example. And you never finish doing that. And I've been in teams where we've bought a new machine or a new investment for the manufacturing plant, and the first thing I do is I want to be here for the first run. I want to be here pressing the button of the machine. I want to show you how to clean it, and then we'll discuss how many hours do we need to put on the budget for cleaning times. But if you have to involve with your team to show that for those specific things you had at their same level, and that gives you power to create the respect. They need to see that I've had the feeling that sometimes people have CEOs or general managers that, since they don't come from the scientific background, they say, well, I'm not going to spend time spending this to them because they won't get it, they won't understand. Well, this is a big mistake. If your general manager or your owner cannot understand the story that you're selling, you're not selling it properly. A good scientist should be able to tell a story of their project beautifully simple. That's the beauty of it. So looking at it from the other side, if you're a scientist that went up the ladder and now are a CEO, you can take that for granted. You're supposed to understand all the people. So take advantage for that. Take advantage from that. Show them that you understand, show them that you care. And on the other side, if you don't understand, fight until they explain it to you properly, because otherwise you're not creating a good team that at the very end, they are supposed to replace you someday. So they have to do it better than you do.
Yeah, I always say, listen to understand, not to respond. And that's just one of the learnings I had over the years. It's also a learning for myself. I know myself, now I know myself quite well. I always have been the forward-leaning pusher, going. But that listening to understand before you respond is a really important one. And I think executives, the ones I speak to, and I speak a lot in my line of job, who are really on top of it, are the ones who are able to listen, understand, before they react and respond and do stuff. And it's a capability that also a lot of us as executives do not have. And that makes it difficult for them. So I really like that one. Hey, Gemma, we are at the end of our half an hour. I think it's a bit more than half an hour, maybe a bit short. I'm not completely sure. It was so nice talking to you. I really loved it. I think that this session will have a lot of benefit for people around us, for executives as a bit of inspiration. Again, I started with Gemma is an inspirational woman. I'm going to push it a bit harder. You are a real inspiration for many. And let's hope that people also find inspiration out of this story you shared with us. So thank you for that. This is something you wanna share at the end?
Thank you so much for your time, for your efforts, and anything I can do to help and communicate, you know where I am. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thank you, Gemma. It was nice speaking to you.
Thank you. Same thing.